Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how I made a little basket for my kids. So I have a strip of fusible interfacing here for the handle and some batting just for a little stabilizer because I didn't have enough of that interfacing to do the whole basket. And then I have a strip of fabric for my handle as well. My strip is 2.5 by 20 inches, but that's a bit long. I would recommend cutting it shorter. My lining fabric I cut at 12 by 10 inches, and then my main fabric, what's going to be the outside of the basket, is a bit bigger, but I wanted to do it that way. That way, if my fabric shifted while I was quilting it, it was fine. So I took my piece of batting, laid it down, and then put my line or outer fabric on top and just smoothed it out nicely. And I'm just going to quilt some straight lines on here. So all I did is started in the middle and then turned around and butted the edge of my presser foot up with my previous line. And I just continued doing this until I was done the whole piece, and then I went on to the other piece and did that. It took a little while, but I got it done. And now that I have them all quilted, I will trim them down to the size that I want. So these will be also trimmed down to 12 by 10. One of my viewers suggested that I make little Easter baskets after I made my crumb bucket from out of my scrap fabrics. So I figured, why not? So I talked to my kids about it, and they picked their fabrics because these would not be the fabrics that I would have chosen for this. I had different ones in mind, but they saw this piece and that's what they wanted. And I figured, you know what? I didn't have anything planned for this anyway. It was in a scrap bag that I bought at my local quilt shop, and I had no plans for it whatsoever. I was actually considering donating it or getting rid of it. Now I ended up using it, so I didn't have to get rid of it. Then once we have them all trimmed up, we're going to lay them right sides together and making sure that they are the right way because this is directional fabric. We do need to cut out some squares on the bottom so that we can box our corners. So I'm just going to line everything up really nicely. That way I can cut both pieces at one time. And then again, making sure that I am on the bottom piece and my fabric is in the right direction because, well, it would kind of suck. You finish it and then everything's upside down. And I'm cutting my squares out at 3 by 3 inches. And I'm just using my heat erase pen here to draw my lines so that I know exactly where to cut. And I'm going to do that on both sides of the bottom. I'm going to do this on my outer layers and on my lining fabric. Oh, and be sure to stick around till the end because I am doing a giveaway today because I hit over 500 subscribers and I'm very grateful for that. So be sure to stick around to the end and see what I'm doing as a giveaway. Then I'm just going to put some clips there to mark where I need to sew and also keep everything in place. And then now I'm going to take my lining and do the exact same thing with the lining that I did with the outer layers. Just on this one, we have to make sure that we leave an opening on the bottom there so that we can turn everything right side out later on, because you don't want to, close everything up and then you can't turn it right side out. And those corners are just going to go into my scrap bin. Yeah, so I marked my opening so that I don't forget. And then now that they're all sewn together there, and with minus the opening there, I'm just going to iron everything open. That way it'll be a little bit easier when I sew them all together and for boxing the corners. And when you're doing the inner layer, outer layer here with the batting, make sure that your iron doesn't touch the batting. You don't also want to have it melt or stick to your iron. That would suck. So while I'm at the iron anyway, I'm going to get my handle ready. So I'm just going to take my interfacing and then press that onto my handle on the wrong side of the fabric. You can see that my fabric's a bit wider than my interfacing, but I just did that to reduce bulk. My interfacing I cut at 2 inches wide, whereas my fabric is 2.5, so that I would have that 1/4 inch lip there to fold over, just to reduce bulk for when I'm top stitching it. And then you just fold everything in half here, or the strip, and then give it a good press to hold it in place. And if it doesn't want to stay, there's nothing wrong with putting some pins in or clips. I ended up putting some clips just to hold it in place until I was ready to sew. And now we are ready to box our corners, so you just want to open that up and then line up those center seams there and make sure that everything's nice and flat, and just put some clips or pins, whichever one you prefer. I prefer clips when I'm doing stuff like this. And then I'm just going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I totally forgot to mention that. That's what I did with all my seams here, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Sorry about that. I'm just going to clip everything in place and then head over to my sewing machine. That way I can sew everything at once and I'm not always running back and forth. And I'm just double checking that I did remember to leave an opening there for turning. That's very important. And when you're sewing something like this, it does get a little bit bulky with all those layers there. I do have my walking foot on and that makes it a lot easier. But if you don't have a walking foot, just make sure that you're going nice and slow and you might have to help along a little bit. I've done stuff like this without a walking foot, but trust me, it was one of the best investments I ever made and I will never go back to not using a walking foot. So you just want to sew your corners on your outer layer and on your lining fabric, and then I'm going to top stitch my handle, and then we are almost ready to assemble this thing. For my top stitching, I am going as close to the edge as I can, about 1/8 inch of a way, and I'm going to go down both sides of my handle just to give it a nice clean finished look. Now I'm just going to turn my outer layer right sides out because I want to baste my handle on there. It'll just make it a little bit easier and I won't have to worry about keeping everything in place later on. So now I was just kind of checking and it looked like I liked it here, so that's why I continued with this length. But once it was all done, the handle was a bit floppy and I should have gone shorter. But yeah, if you want to, you don't need to baste this here, but I did. It just makes it easier when you're putting everything together And then I was double checking that I was sewing it on the right way. I'm brain fart sometimes, I tell you. All right, now it's time to put it all together. I have my lining fabric still with the wrong sides out, and my outer fabric is right sides out. This way, when you put it together like this, you put the outer layer inside the lining, it'll be right sides together. So you just want to make sure that you're lining up all of those seams there, and then that way everything will look nice. And I'm just going to clip it all the way around, and again, I will be sewing that with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, now we're gonna turn this thing all right sides out. So you just reach into that opening that you left there and you wanna pull everything out, and this can be a little fiddly, but just go slow so that you don't rip out your stitches, and then keep going. And then I'm just going to push everything inside and roll that seam there just to kind of make everything line up nicely. And then for the opening that you left inside, you can hand stitch it or machine stitch it. I'm gonna machine stitch it because I don't feel like sitting and hand stitching right now. So I just pinch it together like this and take it over to my sewing machine and sew about 1/8 of an inch along that edge as well. Once that was done, then I took it back to the ironing board because I wanted to give that top there a little bit of a press just to make it a little bit crisper and it would look a little bit nicer. And then I will take it to the sewing machine and top stitch that as well just to hold it down better so that the lining stays in there nicer. It's up to you if you want to do this part or not. I just think it looks nicer if you do. And there, it's all done. That handle ended up being a little bit longer than I liked and a little on the floppy side. Maybe use a heavyweight interfacing instead of a medium. I don't know. But I do like how it turned out overall, minus the handle. Next time I think I will just make it the handle a little bit shorter and then it wouldn't flop around so much. But live and learn, right? So for my giveaway to celebrate hitting 500 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away some patterns and there will be 2 winners. I will be giving away the bunny pattern that is by Elizabeth Hartman. Sorry about the glare there. And then also whoever wins the bunny pattern will also be getting the canned pears. This one is by Fig Tree & Co. And I believe you can get these patterns on Fat Quarter Shop. I'll double check, and if you can, I'll leave the links down below. And the second winner will be getting the Bjorn Bear, also by Elizabeth Hartman, and then a Thimble Blossoms pattern. I think it looks so cute. It's called Puddle Jumping. It's a little mini quilt. To be entered, you need to be subscribed to my channel and also comment down below what your all-time favorite quilting pattern is. A big thank you to everyone who has subscribed and supported my channel. I appreciate you guys so much.